With every decade, video games go through major shifts and orientate themselves towards trends that seem to establish a standard so excellent everyone wants to copy. For single-player games, this evolution leaned towards open-world titles, which were naturally introduced in the early 3D days, but realized the potential of being truly open-world with HD consoles. Now we are used to seeing big-budget AAA productions offering grand explorable worlds, and no matter how stale this formula might become, there's always this one title that shakes up the recipe in a way no one has seen before. Naturally, having these huge places to reconnoiter also means longer playtimes, especially if you turn over every stone and leave. How much you see is basically up to you, but even if you do the bare minimum, you will still linger in one of those worlds for a couple of hours, in most cases. On paper, this is a win-win situation. The player gets expansive areas to witness and at the same time receives one more reason to let the pile of shame grow. But this isn't the truth to the whole story. Due to open world titles being so extensive in their playtimes, deliberately short experiences grab the short part of the stick and do not seem noteworthy. Granted, it also has something to do with the pricing, especially if games seem to become more expensive as time goes on. For some players, they calculate the worth of a game based on the playtime, in accordance with the price, which means the more money you spend, the longer a game should be. A somewhat justifiable line of thought, yet it hinders certain ideas to flourish or show their true potential. Some features do not need to be blown up, but are not strong enough to warrant their own game. This is why we often get alternative modes, mini-games or other poppycock, because it's a fitting way to test and try without being passed by. Luckily, remakes, ports and remasters are perfectly to conceptualize those niche ideas. In recent times, there are two certain expansions proving their merits by being short, self-contained adventures, maybe even only working in the cosmos of their smaller scope. The port of Super Mario 3D World introduces Bowser's Fury, an independent side mode, completely separated from the main adventure. While it obviously borrows assets, ideas and basic mechanics from the main campaign, everyone who has played it will agree it feels different enough to a point where you could consider it to be its own game. The most apparent change is the ability to turn the camera, something not possible in 3D World, thanks to its multiplayer. However, a moving camera would be nothing if there's nothing to explore, and despite the fact 3D World focuses on linear title levels, Bowser's Fury makes a turnaround and offers a connected, uncluttered and ironically open world. And it feels just as smooth as you would expect. Open worlds are often linked to exploration, which makes sense, but sometimes suffer from the downside of having those big, empty sections of nothing. In a sense, you're basically wandering through interactable loading screens to discover the interesting parts, which ultimately speaks against the potential of having limitless freedom. Bowser's Fury circumvents this problem with multiple ways. First, you have Plessy to cross uneventful crossovers, which happens within seconds and on top of that is enjoyable to do. Next, you encounter multiple platforming challenges, and I do have to say, why are there no more open world platformers? The 3D Marios kinda lean towards that direction, but focus more on exploration as well instead of actual platforming, and there's so much potential untouched. Constantly you're interacting with all sorts of features, and due to this consistent interacting with your surroundings, there's never a moment of boredom. While we do not know for sure, this might only be possible because Bowser's Fury is so short. Nothing needs to be stretched out and everything sits right where it belongs to. Most definitely if Nintendo or any other big fish is developing their next AAA production, there has to be the point where they try to pad out the playtime, and they have to be aware that it was done with complete awareness. Or do you really think every moon in Super Mario Odyssey or every shrine in Breath of the Wild has an excellent idea behind them, that the game would be worse without it? This is not to say both titles following poor design choices, but only proves that these full-price games presumably have to stretch out their playtime. Bowser's Fury is not in such a opposition and can therefore fully concentrate on being a short, enjoyable ride. You can apply the same to Kirby. Superstar Ultra, while being a mainline title, offers a couple of independent modes with their own twists and turns that would otherwise never see the light of day. Take Meta Knight's Revenge for example. Under a very generous time limit, you slowly take a huge battleship apart and are repeatedly thrown into new situations. The fast-paced action is the essence of this mode and would never work in a more blown context. Every other adventure is fairly similar in that approach, and although Superstar Ultra might come across as a minigame collection, direction. All of it still feels like one adventure despite offering so much variety. The most recent proof of concept, however, is Margolor's Epilogue. Just like Bowser's Fury, the self-contained side adventure after beating the main campaign. As Margolor, you're traveling through new worlds and have to power up by leveling certain techniques. There's a surprisingly vast scope of what you want to improve on and a huge difference by the end. Bonus adventures like these are no strange drafts and were done multiple times, but not to this extent. Normally a side mode with another main character reuses 90% of the base game's level design and generally lives by the purpose of controlling another interesting character. Margolor's Epilogue is different in that regard, as the little alien was already playable in multiple titles and does not justify a whole mode on its own. It's the little mechanics like the mentioned level system, challenges, new enemies, altered bosses and grandiose final that make this Epilogue worth buying on its own. There's actually an echo chamber among the Kirby community that longs for a Kirby RPG, since it's one of the last big genres the pink glutton has never touched, and because of the quantity of charming characters and lore to pull from the story, it's not as far-fetched as it appears. Just like with some titles before, Margolor's Epilogue brings us one step closer into that direction, with its level system where you have to kill enemies to gather experience points and spend them. It wouldn't be the first time the creators of Kirby use smaller modes to experiment for something greater, and the very same could be applied to Bowser's Fury. At the release of this video, there's still no sign of a new 3D Mario, since Odyssey and Bowser's Fury might be the first stepping stone to a much more open and grander open world adventure. Even if it's not, Bowser's Fury as well as Margolor's Epilogue remain enjoyable on their own and benefit greatly from their replayability. Starting a quick playthrough on a weekend for both modes seems much more accessible than gathering 900 moons or spending 100 hours on an open world, when these modes offer servable experiences without losing any quality. What I basically want to say with this video, not every short game can be measured by its price, and even though you expect long time enjoyment for mom's money, bite-sized games should not be dismissed for what they are. Big companies are probably never going to release such focused games for a budget price, but sneaking them into remakes or ports is justifiable enough to warrant them in the first place. And if said modes go beyond of what some mainline titles try to achieve, it's even better. I mean, a Super Saiyan Cat Bowser fight or Final Fantasy-esque clash against a tree can apparently only happen in such cases.